welcome back to the garage. So this week we're obviously continuing on with the 1987 Chevrolet S10, also known as the Duke. So this week we went to the Junkyard and ended up finding an S10. So we pulled a whole bunch of stuff off that, and we've also been kind of farting around sorting parts, which is one of the unseen portions of any type of long-term restoration. So we'll talk a bit about that, and we'll have a look at the truck. Well, we're down here in the boneyard today looking for some parts for our daily driver, but I've come across a couple interesting cars here, so I figured I'd show you them. So we got a Malibu Classic. Much to my surprise, the interior does not stink like mice. Now this one has the 3.8 engine in it. Which looks very small in this engine bay. While I was over here, I noticed a couple other kind of interesting units here, other than the purple smart car. There's a Nova. And then its cousin, the Apollo. So here's one you don't see very often. A green 4th generation Dodge 3/4 ton. Now, I like this color quite a bit. I looked at buying a brand new truck in this color. Was a Cummins. Here's another seldom seen sight, CJ7. And one interesting thing about this truck is it's got a V8 from the factory. Well, we're back out at the wreckers today, and we're going to pull some more parts off this little S10. So this was already a parts truck for somebody else, but just going to prove that no matter how pillaged something is, there's always stuff that we can salvage for what we're doing. So I get the taillights out of it. We're going to take the taillight harness. We're going to see if we can take some parts of that seat to fix ours. We're going to take some of the tailgate hardware. I got the battery tray out of it because it's beautiful. I got a heater box cover, and I've also got a few other little trinkets that we'll go ahead and put on our truck. So there was a few things I wanted under the back of the truck here, so I figured I would just make my life easier and I would just unbolt the box and roll it out of my way. I wanted the filler neck and filler hose, because that saves me $15 US to buy the hose, and the filler neck's about 40 bucks. Now what I found was the spare tire carrier on this one actually works, so we're going to take that, and then I'm going to take this rear light harness and probably the rear bumper brackets too, and we'll take that stuff and put it in our truck. Now you notice this truck only has 3 leafs, including the overload. Mine has 3 plus the overload. I didn't realize when I did my truck, I put Z85 heavy duty package rear springs in it. So that's why it's got a bit of a rake to it. Whoops. So here's a car you don't see very often at all, actually. This is a Chevy Citation X11. And it still has its aluminum rims on it. This thing's kind of cool, actually. I always thought they were anyway. I like the way they looked. Obviously it was someone's project at some point. Okay, here's another interesting one. This is a Chrysler Cordoba. Now that's kind of interesting. Engine trans is gone, but a lot of the other stuff is still here, including the cruise control stuff. That's kind of cool. Actually, it's one of the easiest systems to adapt to a street rod. There's the fender tag for the guys that are into that. Even the floor shift parts are all here still, including the column. Now, I'm pretty sure this would be an 8 1/4 rear end in this. The quarters are actually in not bad shape if somebody needed quarters. I got all excited when I saw this truck, because some of these have what this one does, which is a painted diesel smooth bumper. Now, I've been looking for one of these for my half-ton Chev for quite a while, and unfortunately this one's both rotted out and damaged, so no dice on that. This one's got a 6.5 turbo diesel in it and automatic transmission. There's a sight you don't see every day. And we'll have a look and see if this is a Plodge or an actual Dodge. This one might be a Plodge. So it's a Canadian Dodge then. That's kind of neat. So for the last few days, I have been sorting parts, which is, you figure I have pulled parts off of about 4 different S10s since I bought this truck. Because I had my own donor truck, of course. Well, sort of. And then I also have been to a few scrapyards pulling parts. So this week, I was able to get a filler neck with the fuel hose, which I know what you're thinking. Don't you already have one? And yes, I do. The problem with it is I got it sandblasted. And as you can see, it's got rust. Now, I could just go ahead and put a bit of maybe JB Weld or something over that, or I could braze it shut. But at the end of the day, if I could just take and clean this one up and put it on the truck and not have a hole in it, that would be just as good. So I also pulled from that truck, I got the antenna wiring, I got an OEM antenna, I was able to actually get a spare tire carrier that works. I got a good heater core. I got the taillight harness because mine has been hacked into for trailer lights at some point. I was able to get the charcoal canister bracket, which mine is rotted all to crap. This one is not, so that's good. I got a hood latch. I was able to get a few other little brackets, like this is the heater box bracket. Somebody had already destroyed the heater box, which is how I knew that heater core was good, so I was able to get it out. Usually the stud breaks off. I got a lot of the rubber parts and stuff from the truck too, which they're all still soft, which is nice. That saves me a lot of money for little nickel and dime parts from like LMC truck, right? And I also got the body mount bolts out of it, which were surprisingly nice for how rotten the truck was. I probably won't ever use those, but I have them. So I was able to get quite a few things. I got another set of taillights here as well from that truck. Just a whole bunch of little bits and pieces. I got the heater box cover, which for anybody that's familiar with these trucks, they always rot out underneath the middle here. This one is not, because even the one that I had blasted here, as you can see, it has pinholes. So that's good to have. What else? A bunch of the parts that I ordered have started to come in. So I had a very hard time finding this molded hose. So the bonus is this one's a made in the USA Dayco one. But where this hose goes, it goes over to our bypass here, which you can see I started trying to make something fit. But it goes here, goes around underneath the alternator, and then into the bottom of the intake manifold. So I'm very, very happy to have the correct hose for that, because that is a pain, well, just a great big pain in the butt to try and find something like that or make something work. And the best part was it was all of $7, so. Anyway, talking about sorting parts, so I've been digging through trying to figure out what I have, what I don't have, what I need, what I'm going to be using, what I'm not going to be using. So inside this box here is everything that needs to go inside the cab. So it's, you know, the park brake, pedal assembly, it's the gas pedal assembly, it's the vents, it's the shift boot, shift insulation pad, all that stuff. I got battery cables. So these were the battery cables that were in my truck when I took it apart. And you can see they're pretty badly corroded. And they've been hacked on and all kinds of stuff like that, right? So the truck that was in the Kenny U pull in London, Ontario had a much better set of cables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this old insulation off. I'm going to clean up all these connections and put new insulation on it. But this gets me a much better set of cables to use. So it's stuff like that I've been doing, is just kind of sorting and deciding what I am and am not using. So far that recycle bin there is full of parts that we do not need or will not be using. And that's, you know, swap meet fodder. That stuff we'll take and sell. So like this one here is all mirrors and the cab light and washer bottle. This one is all center caps. So that's stuff that later on we'll go through. That one's all tail lights. So that's basically what we've been doing, is just kind of getting everything organized so that when we're ready to start bolting things back on the truck, we know where they are, we know what we have, and they're ready to go. So that goes up to and includes, of course, I've got 3 steering columns here that I have to decide which one I'm using. That one's the original out of my truck. It's a mess of its own. This is out of an 88, and that's the 82 steering column that was in this cab. I would actually like to use the ignition cylinder out of that truck because I have all the keys that match the entire truck. So right now it's looking like I likely will take the ignition cylinder out of this one and put it in this column, take the parts from that column and put them on this column. So it's kind of a runaround, but it's what we have to do in order to make something work properly for us. Now I got to do the same thing with clutch pedals. Obviously there's a set there and 2 sets here, so we're gonna go through and figure that out. I've been sorting through here this giant pile of crap. So there's 3 brake boosters here, there's 3 master cylinders, and there's also another clutch hydraulic set, which half of is over on that little piece of plywood, and there's 3 proportioning valves. So I gotta decide what exactly I am and am not using, and then obviously we'll recondition it. Now I have a brand new master cylinder here for it. I have all of the clutch hydraulics here that are new, so that's all that stuff we're going to use, but we're still going to need parts like the reservoir and all that stuff. So that's what we're figuring out right now. And this is the part that takes quite a while to do when you're doing a restoration. It's a part that no one ever talks about, is not just finding the parts, but then sorting through what you have, reconditioning it, and organizing it so that you can find it when you need it. Now, one of the other things I wanted to work on this week was kind of getting an idea of how this truck is going to go together. I've put the transmission fluid in it. I've put the differential fluid in it. I have oil to go in it. And I've hung the fenders on it and the new rad support. Now, I just wanted to get a basic idea of how things were going to fit, because the issue here is I can't really begin aligning body panels and things of that nature until I have the doors on the truck, which I dropped them off to be sandblasted. They'll need to be repaired, of course. So once I get them back, I'll be able to actually put the doors on the truck and then begin aligning the fenders and everything, because on an S10, because of the fact that our door hinges are welded to the cab, we have no door adjustment. Well, okay, hang on. I shouldn't say we have no door adjustment, because our striker does move around a little bit. So the thing with that is we can only set the depth of the door though. So we can set the depth of the door. That's the only adjustment that we can make on our doors, which means any alignment that we have to do on the cab of the truck has to be done from the doors forward. So fitting the fenders and the hood and the cowl and the rad support have to be done with doors on, because we can't move the doors. So I want to just kind of throw the fenders on and see where we stand, right? Which you'll see this fender actually doesn't fit too bad. You'll notice they have this weird gap on them, right? But I took photos of the truck that's in the junkyard because it's got OEM fenders on it. The truck's never been apart. And that's exactly how they fit from the factory. But that being said, I'm debating actually cutting the top of the fender here and putting a piece so it comes up and matches that angle. Just a little thing just for my own personal, I don't know, preference, I guess, right? So that's this fender put on the truck, and that's obviously our brand new rad support. Now I've ordered all new fasteners for the truck. So all new J-clips, all new bolts, all that stuff brand new. Which I don't even want to talk about how much that cost. You would think that nuts and bolts and stuff for a vehicle would be fairly cheap, but they're not. I'm about $300 worth of nuts and bolts and stuff. So anyway, that's that side. This side here, obviously someone at some points dropped the fender. And then the corner's bent. So we'll have to straighten that back out and kind of make sure. See, this is one of those things where I need the door to make sure that this corner isn't screwed up. So we'll get the doors on the truck and then we'll start worrying about that stuff, right? But we at least have something. It's kind of neat to come out here now and see something sitting in the garage here that looks like a truck, not just a pile of parts. Now, obviously, I'll have to paint the rad support. I'll have to paint the inner fenders. A lot of the smaller stuff, I was talking to the place that I get a lot of the sandblasting done. They also do powder coating. So stuff like the hood latch, assembly, things like the bumper brace that comes across from the frame rail out to here. Just a lot of the little bits and pieces, I'm going to get them powder coated because it's more cost effective than it is for me to pay to get them sandblasted and then have to prime them and then paint them and all that stuff, because paint's not cheap and neither is primer. So if I can get all the small stuff powder coated fairly inexpensive, that's obviously the way to go. The inner fenders and the rad support, it's much cheaper for me to paint than it is to powder coat. I did ask while I was there, so to get the rad support powder coat, it would be about $150, and then it'd be about $150 for each inner fender. So that's $450. I can buy the paint for about $200 and change. So it's obviously more cost effective to paint this stuff than it is to go ahead and get a powder coat. So one of the things I forgot to mention that I got from the wreckers here. So obviously my box that I have outside is actually in pretty good shape. But the front lip is rotted out of it. So the truck in the wreckers, you'll see like this front lip is actually really nice. It's not even hardly screwed up from people using it as a truck. So I cut that out of there. So that's obviously going to be used. And we'll be able to kind of piece our truck back together a little bit more.